All right, so it is Wednesday afternoon of the past the first deadline for getting your code up submitted, and I have, as of today, done code reviews for about 75% of this class. And what I'm going to have you do this week, and I'll go over it in a minute, is really for those of you, and I restrict this only to those of you that have done the review process with me, talk about either the aspect of actually getting your code reviewed, and if, because this is the reality of what happened, is that some of you, we didn't actually get to a full code review because we needed to do a clarification of the requirements. And so that's okay. That's actually the huge benefit, and those of you that came early was that we got to have a conversation about your code and the requirements as I laid them out, and you had an opportunity to fix that. And for those of you that came after, many of you really wished you had have taken advantage of that. So I really hope to see that change during the next, and we're 2 weeks away. So this is the next cycle of reviews. Our code reviews are going to be quicker this time. And I think what I am going to rethink, though, is the way we schedule appointments. I think what I'll do is, because as many of you, and I appreciated this, when you could, when your schedule allowed, you came into my office hours. And of course, that's what works better for me. But some of you, I've had, as of this point, schedules that are as late as 7 o'clock at night. So that's okay. If I can do it, if my schedule allows, I just have restrictions on my schedule, I'll work that out. But I don't know, I'm still kind of mulling over that part of it. But what I really feel confident about, or what I really feel firm about, is the importance of these code reviews. Because one of the things that I noticed is that there's a certain percentage of this class that come in with some experience. And so what you naturally do is you write the code at the experience level that you're at. But I actually was asking you, and I said this explicitly in the requirements, to actually write at the code level we've learned. And may have not been intuitive why I had wanted you to do that, because even if you have more knowledge than what the section 3 and 4 covered, being able to take a restriction of a code of somebody telling you, I want the code written in this way, is actually a good exercise. And probably the main thing I'm going to try to help us reframe these code reviews is I want you to think of me as the client and you as the developer. And so when I lay out the requirements, I'm telling you, these are my user requirements, right? This is what I want it. This is what I want your code to do. And so it's way important that you understand those code requirements. And and I'm learning. I mean, I actually have a student taking this class that took it this time last year with me, and him and I had a great discussion about the way I had run it last time, because I didn't require code reviews and the way I'm doing it now. And I've made a conscious effort to pull back on the content and focus more on actually you acquiring a skill of being able to code from concept to code. And so this is a really important part of what I've evolved this class for this semester into. And as with anything, we learn the more we do it. So by the time I had done probably a handful of these code reviews, I got into a mode of feeling like I was delivering them better. So, and that's just part of the process. So what I'd like to hear from you is your review of the code reviews. What did you learn from it? What may you change based on next time, right? And how might you have me rethink or consider doing anything differently? Because I asked a couple of you, what would you want me to do differently, either from the requirements for the project develop it 1, or from the code, or any part of that, because here's the reality. Iteration is really what helps us learn. And I learn all the time, and I try to take your feedback and integrate it. And I get that this may not work for some folks. I get that, and I know this may feel counter to the mode of this class, but I talked to my dean actually about this because, you know, I wanted to make sure, you know, where I make sure I was in the right lane here too. And he said as long as I've given students the head up from the beginning of the semester that this is a requirement and I've given you options for online, then, you know, it's really on us to figure out what works for a schedule. But let's, for now, so now that I've just kind of given you that, and the last thing I'll say before we turn to the screen is I very much enjoyed the time I got to spend with you, because I think that's a way important part of this class, because I'm trying to do two things. I'm trying to give you the convenience of doing a lot of the work online, but then having that connection with somebody that can review your code. Because I know I've talked to a couple of you here that are actually professionally writing code right now, and you talked about the importance of code reviews and how people talk about how they want to do them, but they don't always. But the importance of having somebody else look at your code, right, and having a discussion about what that is. So anyway, that's what we're going to do. Two things this week. So if by this point and I'm recording this a little later than I normally do, because this is going to be due Monday, and I try to have video out a week ahead, but it just didn't work this week because I wanted to have the experience of these code reviews before I have done them. So I'm actually going to have you do two things, and I'll go over the second thing here in a second. Okay, so for this week, right, you have two parts. And if you didn't do a code review, don't write about this. Just write about your experience of doing part two. And if you did a code review, write about that experience, and then all you have to do, and everyone has to do, is build your life. And I should actually rephrase that because I'll show you what I did in a second. Okay, so this I've already talked about, no problem. Two replies here, right? So if you're doing this, you can reply to either other folks. There'll be probably 3 or 4 folks who at this point haven't done a code review, but you can reply to these if you want as well. But again, this is, and I'm actually going to this weekend start working on the requirements for the next develop it, so we can talk about those in the coming weeks. So here we are. You have now, and I was just reviewing some content here, on the Udemy course, you have finished section 5. Objects, such an important topic, and I believe this is a good introduction. As I've said before, I've pulled back on some of the content, and I think this is a right balance of introducing objects. So what I want you to do, I'm going to pull up my VS Code here, is I want you to, in your public folder, in your public repo in our course GitHub organization, I want you to create a new file, and in that new file I want you to create an object that represents some aspect of your life. Okay, so what I did is my steps, because this is something I track every day. I think about it quite a bit. And so I want you to have 5 properties, right? So I have, and those properties can be strings or they can be numeric values, right? But one of them, right, and I said 5, I want 5 properties here and 1 method, right? So this is the method I wrote that takes in steps, right? So you're writing methods on the object. And so we really think of these as functions, but now we're just going to call them methods because they are inside of an object. There's other reasons why, but for now that's at least a frame for that. And then what I did is I invoked the method right here. So you have to do this by the dot notation. So my steps dot add daily, and so add daily steps, and I pass it a number, right? So when I pass in the steps. And then and some of you, this was a little confusing, is that when you invoke with a, whatever you're invoking it with, you can, when you pass that into a function, right, then you can name this anything you want, right? But it represents the number you're passing. So in this case, a number, it could be a string. But I'm passing this as a argument, and this is a parameter, and I'm passing it as an argument. I always get these reviewers, it's one or the other. But this dot current step, so it's going to go up here and look at, get the number, and plus equal is then just going to add to whatever that is as steps. And then I'm going to return a string. And then I decided here I just do a console. So you can do the output however you want. I don't have a firm requirement on that. The most important thing is I want you to actually, run this, make sure it runs, has no errors. So then you can do the normal process here of, and what I've asked here is for you to provide me a link to your JS file. Okay, so hopefully that, and you're going to see this now as we move, because we really have just week 6 learn together, week 7 learn together, and then we're back on our code reviews. And I know this one's quick, and the next one's 3 weeks, so that's a little more distance. But these are 2, because the next section is arrays. So, and boy, are arrays different in Java as they are in JavaScript, because like I told you, I'm teaching, and I'm really just setting in on Brian Baker's Java class right now. And by the way, Brian Baker, if you know him, is a great instructor at Fresno City in the CIT department. He was really also the inspiration for me to do code reviews, because it just makes more sense to really look at somebody's code, talk to them about it, walk through it with them, and he was part of my inspiration for doing this. Anyway, enough from me. Have a great rest of your work, and then I will prepare, start thinking about, like I said, building up the requirements for the next develop it. But yeah, as you can probably guess, this is going to have something to do with moving the code that you wrote into an object format, and then having, instead of functions, having methods. So anyway, well, as we get there, that's my next step, is to start working on that. Have a great day. Bye.